to my channel. My name is Shiro Jugona and I'm super excited to do my first sit down video. I just started YouTube and I am aspiring to hit to 500 subscribers, and if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And yes, so today I'm going to be talking about my struggle with self-esteem and an experience of being sexually abused by relatives. And I know this is a quite sensitive topic to talk about, and it's like putting yourself out there. But one thing, when I write, I just pray that if I can't be honest, I just prefer just not bringing things out, because I feel like the world today, the social media world today, is quote unquote perfect. People are broken, yet they don't talk about it. People are hurting, yet they post pictures having put on filters and everything. So we look at people and think they are perfect, but they are crashing inside. And I'm not saying this because I'm hurting, because well, I'm way over it, but I'm just like sharing this to help someone, and hopefully someone can get the message and know that they are worth more than what they think. So my first experience wanting to be like someone else, I was 6 years old, and my mom at that point got very, very sick, and my aunts had to come in to help my dad with us, my elder sister and I. I was a jumpy kid, like I think from birth, or what people would call kiherehere, and I used to talk a lot. And I remember like hearing one of my aunts saying, "Why can't you be like Caro?" And Caro is my elder sister. And though I was a kid and very confident, I remember at that point I started calling back and feeling like my personality had an issue, and I had to be more quiet to be loved. And everyone needs love, and everyone needs appreciation, and everyone just needs to feel that they belong somewhere. Especially as a kid, you just need that approval. So I started feeling like I didn't have the best personality. I started looking at my sister and wanting to be like her and things like that. And it went on until I think when I was in class 7 again. Now like my self-esteem at this point got shattered. A little bit of context: I have been brought up in the shanks, where you have like the sitting room and the bedrooms in a separate building with the kitchen. So my parents are very strict with education, and we had to like do preps at home, like get out of school, do your homework, and then start doing like personal studies until a certain point, and then go have your supper, and then prepare, go to bed. And that was like the trend. So at this point, when I was in class 7, my elder sister was in Form 1. She was in a boarding school. And so I used to do my preps, and my mom by that time had invited a cousin to come over and live at our place. And after now my preps, my mom had also given birth to my younger brother, and every time like I would be done doing my personal studies, he would tell my cousin to take me to the kitchen to eat. And I want to imagine, okay, I am, even to date, I fear the dark. I fear darkness. I don't walk in the dark. So like my cousin was supposed to protect me. I think he was around 20 something, 21, 20. So he was supposed to protect me, but the first time it ever happened, I was trying to open the kitchen door, and then he came behind me and like touched my boobs. And you know, like when you're an adolescent, especially in primary school, and you're growing your boobs, you're not very comfortable with your body changes. Like you're trying to make peace with this whole body change thing, and then you just like there. I had seen it happen in school. Like I had seen boys try to, poke girls in school and touch their boobs, but I never spoke up against it. I used to think it's corny, but I didn't know what exactly to say. So when it happened to me, I felt ashamed. I felt like I hadn't made peace with the fact that I was growing boobs, and then now someone that was supposed to protect me was touching me in that way. So the first time I remember like just turning my hand and hitting him, and then like uttering some words, and I didn't know how to tell my mom. And then time moved on, and every time he would take me to the kitchen, the habit continued. He would touch me, and that way, because I couldn't speak up, that way my self-esteem continued going down, and I was wondering, what is wrong with me? Is there anything wrong with me? Is this what happens to every other girl? Is it? And then, like, for my parents, we've never sat down to talk about sex or talk about boys or talk about anything. So I didn't know how to approach my mom and tell her, this and this has been happening. So I carried the shame for years and years, and I never talked about it. And every time, like, feeling like I had to fight, and that created, I started becoming a bitter teenager, because I remember like fighting my younger siblings, and someone would do something to me and I used to overreact to everything. I used to like yell, and I think at some point people thought that was my personality, but I knew like I was bitter, but I didn't know what to do with it. When I got to high school, again, the need to be approved, the need to be loved, the need to be wanted was so much. And then now, having come from shags, and people like in high school had these divisions of like people who come from Nairobi and people who come from shags, and those who come from shags didn't have a voice, and it was just super confusing for me. So I buried myself in books, and I started being a bookworm, and I started reading and like proving myself, getting the best grades. But deep down I was broken. I just needed someone to tell me that I was worth more. And I remember like after high school and after I got my results, I had passed, yes. But I remember one day lying on the bed on a hot afternoon, because where I come from the sun is really hot in January, and I remember like lying in bed and thinking, so what next? I have the grades, I'm going to be going to uni in a year's time, but I don't know what I'm going to do, because I was very broken and I just needed someone to talk to me. And I remember like at that point I had a boyfriend, but I wasn't sure he loved me, and I wasn't sure he would stay, because I felt like I was not worth anything or anyone being around me. And I remember like us talking about stuff, and I never told him about the abuse or anything. And then at one point deciding to run away from home, because I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone, and like, I thought I was grown and now I could look for my life and just be near my boyfriend. Whatever happens. And I ran away from home, and that's maybe a story for another day. I ran away from home, went to my sister then was in second year in uni, and I remember like things got worse and worse, and like my first breakup happened. I fell into a depression. I started like I got a rebound, and chains of stories of brokenness like were just like forming the theme of my life. I didn't know what exactly was happening, and now like getting to uni and knowing I couldn't prove myself. Everyone there was bright, everyone there had maybe an A or an A minus, and you couldn't prove anything to anyone. I started now like seeking approval and being everywhere, and I didn't have any boundaries. Like I remember like going to Christian Union and serving in different ministries. I was everywhere, and people used to host bashes for people. Like if someone has a birthday, they would host bashes for them. And I remember going to each and like almost every one of them. It didn't matter whether I was tired or anything. I just went for like every single one of them and every single one of those meetings, because I just needed to belong and I needed to feel like I'm at home. And I remember like just praying to God and seeking my worth and slowly starting to read the Word of God. And though that didn't happen overnight, I started creating boundaries in my own life, and my self-esteem kind of came back slowly by slowly. I started creating boundaries. I started choosing where I wanted to go. I started feeling like I don't need to be everyone's friend. Because funny enough, I had so many friends. I had people who valued me, but because I didn't value myself, I used to feel like they don't value me. I used to question whether they love me enough. And I started feeling I don't have to be everyone else's friend. And I just needed two people, like two honest, legit friends. And when I started like narrowing down to like what I wanted and setting boundaries, starting to choose, I want to serve here and I won't be serving here, and making decisions and standing by them, slowly, I started like gaining my self-worth. But still the heart of abuse was in until like I graduated in 2019, and I went home and had like my parents talking about that same cousin coming back to our place. And I remember like feeling bitter, and my younger sister had just finished high school, and I remember like thinking, oh wow, are they bringing that guy back? Will he like start doing what he did to me, to my younger sister? And that's like the first time I ever talked about it. And I remember telling my mom, why is it that you keep taking people's kids into our house? You have enough kids of your own. And I didn't say anything, but I remember like telling her that last time XYZ was here, I didn't have a very good experience and I wouldn't want him to come back. And I don't know what I was expecting, like saying that, because I expected like my mom to dig deep or to ask Kwani what was the experience, but she didn't ask anything. Maybe she was too ashamed, or it just kept her mind, but she never discussed it. And I think in that moment I felt like I should never share it. But one day like I was going to work and I realized how bitter I had become, and how I've always like tried fighting for myself and always walking, being cautious, thinking that someone is going maybe to touch my butt or maybe touch my boobs or anything. And I remember like that day deciding I'm gonna talk to someone. It doesn't matter whether they're going to judge me, but I'm going to talk to someone. And that day, like I talked to a friend. I told him, like, you know, I was abused as a teenager, and I texted him, and he told me, oh, I would want to hear about that. And then that day I couldn't talk to him because I was like super emotional. And then the following day he followed up, and I recorded voice notes, and I was crying, and it was so like so fresh. The wounds were coming out fresh, and that was like the first turnaround point. It was like recent. It was like the first turnaround when I talked to him. Though he didn't like, give any advice, he just said, I'm sorry that happened to you and whatever. I remember like the freedom I felt by just sharing that out, and finding a lot of freedom just talking about it. And recently I found myself like talking to people and telling them, oh, you know, this and this happened to me, but in that I learned that God still cares for everyone, and that no one is worth that abuse. And like I found more freedom in talking about it, and the bitterness went. Though I still have questions, and sometimes I just feel like that shouldn't have happened, I am comfortable. Like I am comfortable, and I just wish I could like face that person and tell him, you did this and this to me, but I forgive you. I don't know when that step will ever get to, but I am comfortable like living with that scar and seeing it and seeing the woman it has made me. And a few lessons maybe just to pass across to parents. One, I think it is very healthy to create an environment where you talk about sex and men and boys and girls with your kids. I think these things are not a taboo, and they shouldn't be treated as a taboo. Creating a healthy environment, because I'm thinking if like we talk about everything else with my parents, and if how we talk about everything else is how we talk about men, I think I would have been more comfortable than talking about how my cousin was treating me, instead of like just keeping quiet and being bitter and looking for things to prove myself. Secondly, if you've ever been abused, I want you to understand that it is not your fault and you didn't do anything to deserve that. It is not your fault. And the truth is, we live in a very broken world, and people will say all things to justify. For Christ's sake, as a class 7 girl, I didn't have anything indecent to wear, or I didn't even know how to seduce anyone, so you wouldn't blame it on me. And so many people who have been hurt and people who have been abused, they didn't deserve it, and they didn't do anything. And no one deserves being hurt despite what they've won, despite no one deserves being hurt. And thirdly, abuse is not necessarily rape. Because people, like, when you talk about abuse, people are thinking, oh, she was raped. No. If someone touches you and you without your consent, that is sexual abuse. If people talk about your private parts without your consent, it is abuse. And I remember like having that discussion in our uni class group, and someone like had graphically described a lady's behind, and that to me is abuse. You don't talk about someone like that. And I think it is time we stopped normalizing things and normalizing abuse in the name of we just liberal, or in the name of it's a free world. It is free, yes, and it is all fun and games until it happens to your daughter, until it happens to someone that is close to you, and now it gets home, it hits home. And the scars that are left by some of these things, they are the things that form some of us, the traumas. And I think it is only fair to guard people. I don't know from men's perspective, because I haven't had men open up about the abuse, but I've had my friends, and most of the time the abuse is from people that were trusted to take care of them, people that should have stood up for them, people that should have defended them. They end up hurting them. And so if you're one of those people that have been hurt by people that should have stood up for you, I am sorry that you had to go through that, and I am sorry that you have to deal with scars and pain that you didn't cause. And I would advise that you seek help, or you just talk to someone, and don't you ever forget that you're worth more, and it had nothing to do with you. You're worth more than the abuse, you're worth more than the pain you feel, you're worth more than the regrets, you're worth more than the shame that you feel. And so guys, we've come to the end of our conversation today, and I hope it helps someone. I hope we can be more cautious with how we treat people, and I hope that we can offer a listening ear to them. And more than anything else, I pray that you're going to have the best week ahead. And don't forget to like this video, to subscribe if you, and hit the notification bell so that you get notified every single time that I post a video, because we are going to be having more of these legit conversations. And until next time, bye bye, have a good one.